Alyssa Bridges, the coordinator for college and career counseling, Tracy Main, the college and career counselor, and Jason Purrier, the college place director. I will now turn it over to Miss Bridges.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Alyssa Bridges. I'm the Administrative Coordinator for College and Career Counseling Services here in Prince William County Public Schools. And we are so excited that you're with us today to learn about award letters. We understand that the FAFSA is still being processed, and many of you are waiting award letter information and even the results from your FAFSA. So we are just excited that we're with you today to give you a heads up and process some information ahead of time so that you know some key points to look for. And I'm going to pass it over to Tracy to introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. I am Tracy Main, Middle School College and Career Specialist. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. We are so excited that we have Jason from the College Place with us. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Tracy. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Jason Purrier. I am here from the College Place in Alexandria. It's a college resource center that's physically located in Alexandria, Virginia. But I work with students and families throughout half of the Commonwealth of Virginia on topics like financial aid and working through the process of figuring out how students and families can effectively manage the process of paying for post-secondary education. I'm going to share my screen. As I share a little bit more just about the College Place. If you're interested in receiving more information from us, you can scan the QR code using the student's information to initially fill out information. We collect parental information towards the end. I don't spam. I don't send out a lot of information in terms of messaging really until senior year. And most of that is focused on a summer melt campaign that we do with our graduating seniors, talking about what they need to do to prepare between graduation from high school and both at the 2-year and 4-year. So if you're interested, scan the QR code, use the bit.ly website to sign up for more information, from us. So again, this session is about financial aid offers and what to do once you have your award letters in hand. I know when Alyssa and I were originally planning for this session, we were hopeful that award letters would already be there, mostly to troubleshoot or to answer questions for students and families. But since that is not the case, please definitely don't hesitate to reach out once you have those award letters in hand. If you're not sure from one institution to another what your effective cost is going to look like, if you have questions about any of the items that are outlined in your financial aid awards, I was hoping to be able to do a little bit of that during the presentation this evening. But I know the reality is, especially with the delays that are ongoing with the FAFSA and from federal student aid, that many of you are still simply waiting. I want to share that you're not alone in this. Many students and families are still waiting that have done everything right in this process. I will reemphasize to continue monitoring your email for schools, and if they ask for follow-up information, just make sure you're responding as quickly as possible. But also don't feel like you have to decide by X date if you don't have the information you need to make a well-informed decision. Say it gets to May 10th and you're trying to decide because all of your schools have a deposit deadline of May 15th. Don't let that deadline push you into making a decision. Reach out to the schools, say, hey, I still have not got my financial aid award letters. I need more time. And most schools are flexible, are being extremely flexible this spring. So give yourself that flexibility for the students, give yourself the flexibility for parents, give your student and your family the flexibility and the time you need to really consider these financial aid awards and to make a good decision for the family and for the student. So first, I want to share just congratulations on getting to this point, senior year of high school for the colleges that you've been admitted into. I know that comes with a great deal of excitement, and now you're eagerly turning the way that you look at institutions in a very different perspective. Now you're not worried about the admissions process or anything on your transcript or in your application or what a recommendation letters say. Now you're focused on what can I do at these institutions? Or what are they offering me in terms of opportunities? So that's great. That's a great space to be in. And usually around this time, you would have a financial aid award letter to help inform that decision. But they should be coming soon. Even for corrections, ICERs, which are your records that are sent to institutions to develop your financial aid awards. They should be there by May 1st or around beginning of the month at the latest. So with over the next few weeks, you should be receiving financial aid award letters. My feeling is, especially with corrections, that process could get pushed to the middle of the month of May. And again, if you get close to a timeline or a deadline, reach out to schools, share with where you're at in the process. They should be accommodating. But let's review what the process looks like for financial aid. So just again, in anything that's listed as a grant in your financial aid award letter is money that you don't have to pay back. Typically, they are state or federal level funds, although some institutions have financial aid in grant funded categories that they will award to students based on their enrollment in their school in a particular major. Sometimes it's pulling money in from state or federal resources as well, depending on what your major is or your concentration is as an enrolling first-time freshman. But other than the Teach Grant, so for anyone that wants to become a teacher, you'll work with the school that you enroll in, excuse me, to get access to Teach Grant funds. That is the one grant that may have to be paid back, but the only caveat there is that there's a service requirement after graduation. You've got 8 years to fulfill a 4-year service requirement. So the Teach Grant, that's the only grant that may have to be paid back, but if you meet the service requirement, that stays a grant forever. If you don't, it becomes an unsubsidized loan. So for any student thinking about using the Teach Grant to help pay for post-secondary education, just make sure you talk to your advisor. You have a plan in place for how you're going to meet the service requirements. But for every other grant that you'll see on your financial aid award letter, that's free money that you don't have to pay back. Sometimes there's requirements that you have to meet to keep ongoing qualification for those grants alive. So maybe it's having a student aid index or SAI that makes you eligible from a need-based perspective, or maintaining a specific GPA once you've enrolled in college on a year-by-year basis. So once you get your financial aid award letters, you see those grants outlined in your award. Make sure you understand what the requirements are of each of those, if they're renewable, and so if you'll see them year over year, and if there's anything else that you do to maintain that eligibility, or if they're one-time grants. Make sure you're clear on that language as well. The next category that you'll see are scholarships, typically. These can be presidential scholarships. These can be based on where you live, what your GPA is now in high school, what major you're choosing to enroll in, what types of extracurricular activities the college is hoping to get you engaged in once you're a student on their campus. But again, these are free dollars. And if you've reported outside scholarships to the institution, typically this happens the closer we get to August. You'll see those scholarships populated under your student portal as a way to pay for your cost of attendance for the upcoming semester, upcoming academic year. But as long as you fulfill the requirements of those scholarships, typically either if they require you to maintain a certain GPA or use them for educational expenses only, so tuition and fees, books and supplies, room and board, etc. Make sure you're reading the fine print and the requirements for those scholarships as well. Outside scholarships tend to ask for documentation in July, August, either a final transcript or for you to fill out a form with a photo identity release so that a scholarship organization can publish information about you to either their donors or within newsletters that they send out to the broader community. So just make sure you're following up on that documentation as we get further into the summer months. For work study, if it's offered, it can be offered as federal work study or institutional work study. But essentially, these are dollars that are set aside that the student can earn through part-time work to help them pay for their cost of attendance. Work study funds are not available at the beginning of the semester for the student to use to pay for their cost of attendance. So just keep that in mind. If you see work study on a semester-by-semester basis, the student has to have a job that will clock those hours to earn those funds. The good thing about federal work study is that it doesn't count against you in future aid year calculations, unlike wages from a part-time job that's not connected to work study may do so 2 years from now in terms of prior year taxes that you'll use for your FAFSA. So especially for federal work study positions, if the student is offered it and it makes sense in terms of the time commitment, balancing the academic rigors, especially freshman year, and it's a way for the student to help cover their cost of attendance, I recommend using it as a resource. But you do have to clock those hours and earn those funds. And last but not least are student loans. Some of these loans may be offered directly to the student. So subsidized or unsubsidized student loans will be offered directly to the student themselves to select as an option to pay for post-secondary education. A Parent Plus loan will be listed in the financial aid award letter, but it's the parents who are borrowing those funds to help the student pay for school. And I'll touch on that more a few slides from there. So just to review, in terms of what's billed to the student, these are the direct costs. Typically, someone going into the freshman year, if they're living on campus come fall semester, their tuition and fees, so what they're majoring in, if there are lab fees associated with their courses, if they're required to live in student housing on campus. Typically, there's also a requirement for a meal plan that comes along with that. So all of those are direct costs that will be billed through financial aid to the student, and then financial aid will be used to cover those expenses before any leftover money is dispersed to the student to use for other expenses or their indirect costs, books and supplies, personal expenses, transportation costs to and from home. I mentioned indirect costs a lot when I'm talking to students who are planning to start off their career in higher ed at Northern Virginia Community College, because transportation expenses are a larger part of their financial aid package than a student who may be moving to a campus somewhere else in Virginia. Living on campus might not have access to a car. For students who are going to Nova or going to Mason and are commuting to and from campus, gas, insurance, maintenance on a vehicle can add up to more than what a transportation budget may be for a student who's moving away. So make sure you're paying attention to what these indirect costs add up to. But know that the money to pay for these things in this category will only be dispersed from financial aid if there's aid left over once your direct costs are taken care of in the process of things being literally processed and taken care of in August, typically, before the semester begins. So keep in mind the difference between the sticker price and your actual cost of attendance. We've got public university and private university here as examples. There are some private universities, in-state, out-of-state, that are lower than the tuition and fees listed here for private university, and then there are others that are higher. When you get your financial aid award letters, your direct and indirect costs may be spelled out this clearly, or they may not be. They may be all included in one longer form in terms of your cost of attendance and what financial aid is taken care of. So just make sure you're paying attention to the specific categories that I mentioned before. So tuition and fees, what are the expenses that the student and family are going to have to pay to cover making their classes work in terms of being able to schedule those courses, making sure they're making satisfactory academic progress towards degree completion down the road. There are some decisions that the student has made already or will be making once they deposit and declare their intention to go to an institution. If a school offers differentiated tuition, make sure you're paying attention not only to that right now as the student makes the decision about where they're going to go, but especially for delayed entry programs where differentiated tuition is in place. I would have it in the back of my mind that differentiated tuition means that, one, you're going to see different costs depending on the year that the student is in the school, whether or not they're in the program or not. But that's an area where college costs could go up in future years. And if you're going on general tuition and fees versus differentiated tuition and fees, which may be for a nursing program or an engineering program, that have higher programmatic costs in terms of running those individual programs, make sure you're paying attention to that. But from a general sense, as we're looking at costs, housing and food is another place to make a decision. So these rates may be what you see in your financial aid or your cost of attendance breakdown from schools. But this is an opportunity where a student can save money, but shouldn't be cheap for the purposes of trying to save money if it's going to come at the cost of them eating well enough to do well as a student. So when I'm meeting with students and families and we're talking about, ways to either manage the budget of paying for school or how to save in this process, getting a meal plan, if say you have 10, 12, and 15 meal options from the school. If if the student typically either doesn't eat breakfast or doesn't eat a heavy breakfast, or maybe he only eats 2 meals a day, a 10 meal count meal plan could work for that student, because maybe during the week they're going to be on campus and they just need access to the dining hall for 2 meals, whether it's breakfast and lunch, or lunch and dinner, or breakfast and dinner if the class schedule is kind of scattered through the day and they go off campus and on campus, with a work schedule in place. And then they're going to be at home, or they'll use money that's been saved to pay for food outside of a meal plan on the weekends. Excuse me. So that's one way to lower that cost. But if, say the student is like me, when I was a teenager, when I went into college, I ate a lot, and I needed a meal plan that would meet my caloric needs as especially a first time freshman. So I didn't get the most generous meal plan, but I got one that essentially gave me at least 2 meals a day, and with the option of a possible third depending on the day of the week. I knew that's what I needed as a student, so that's not an area that I could save money in terms of my budget, my overall cost of attendance. But this is an area where students and parents have a conversation, and maybe if the student does have, maybe they have a higher metabolism or a higher appetite like I did when I was younger. Maybe that's a way that, if there's a favorite snack that is preserved, you don't have to worry about refrigeration, in move-in, buy those snacks, those things in bulk, and move the student in with that. So you can take care of that breakfast need, or that snack need that the student has, to help them move in and get settled in for their fall semester if it's affordable, in terms of what the family is doing in terms of planning. Um, but have a conversation about meal plans, but make sure the meal plan makes sense for the student. I don't want any college student going hungry, because if a student is going hungry on a college campus, they're not able to focus academically, and if they're not able to focus academically, they might not be graduating in 4 years. So either extending their educational journey in post-secondary education, or they may be coming back home to ask mom and dad for more money to help them pay for school. And if that's something that mom and dad are happy to do, great. But have the conversation and make sure that the student and parents are on the same page in terms of what the meal plan should be. In terms of books and supplies, as an indirect cost, I've mentioned it in a lot of presentations about preparing for this process of paying for college. But if you're looking to save money, don't go to your campus bookstore. Even when there are sales to get rid of volume that are in place, sometimes you can save money in those sales, but oftentimes you can find those same materials online or through a third-party resale option for cheaper. So if you're looking to save money in this process, don't go to your campus bookstore. Go through third-party vendors. Make sure that the edition is the right one, or that it's close enough that it'll work for your course. Network with students on your campus, within your major, within your program. There's typically students that have taken the class the semester before, that are looking to get rid of the course materials, and instead of taking it back to the bookstore, maybe getting 10 or 25%, if they can sell a used book to you for 50% of what they paid, it gives them a little bit more money back than what they would have received maybe by taking it back to their on-campus bookstore, but then gives you cost savings as well. You can also choose to rent your textbooks, but if you like using a highlighter, pen, or pencil to take notes as you go through your coursework, that's not a way to save money, because when you go to turn back that book in at the end of the semester, you'll get charged for the replacement for a new book. This is personal expenses and transportation is another area for students and families to have conversations. Maybe a college is saying that you need $2,000 in your transportation budget to go back and forth to home over the course of the semester, maybe pay for some insurance, other personal needs that you have. Do you need to go home that often? For parents, I know this might not be your favorite topic or something that you're looking forward to in terms of your discussion with your student. But if the student is commuting, you may see them every day. If the student is going somewhere else in the Commonwealth of Virginia for college, you might be able to visit them once or twice a month, depending on schedules and, of course, budget and their academic coursework, et cetera, so on and so forth. If your student is going to another part of the country to go to school, how often can they come home? Is it a bus trip? Is it a plane ticket? Have conversations about especially for the school that the student decides to enroll in. What does a reasonable budget look like? Are there areas maybe where mom or dad or grandparents, whomever, can help? So the student doesn't have to rely on financial aid or borrowing additional funds, but planning far enough in advance. Maybe family can help get the student to and from home a few times during the year. So Thanksgiving holiday, winter holidays, Christmas, New Year's, what have you. Uh, Big events in the family, weddings, birthdays, wedding or marriage milestones for older relatives. What are those things that the student wants to be home for? And how can they manage that in a way that their budget is reasonable? They're not having to necessarily borrow a lot to do that, but they're still not missing those things from home that they want to be a part of as they go through their collegiate experience. But make sure you're paying attention to the total cost of attendance. This is the difference in terms of the sticker price between public schools and private schools. I know that some students and families will eliminate institutions just based off the sticker price before they see financial aid. But that's why we're here this evening. So one, I do want you to know your cost of attendance because it may not be listed in your financial aid award letter. It's supposed to be in terms of requirements that have been passed down through federal legislation. But some schools have adjusted the financial aid award letters and have gotten that very quickly up to speed, so you can see a good cost comparison between the two. But the overall cost might not be there, and it might be your expected cost of attendance. Make sure you're paying attention to the overall sticker price and not just what the school is trying to get you to focus on, because you need to do the math oftentimes. Grant money, scholarships, factor that out, and pay attention to loans, work study, and if there's a gap in this process between what the school is offering in terms of financial aid, between grants, scholarships, work study, and loans, and the overall cost of attendance. Because that gap needs to be met in some way, whether that's the student applying for and securing additional scholarships between now and when the fall semester begins, whether that's an installment payment plan that parents are willing and able to do. Is it additional student loans that the student will need to borrow to cover that gap? Are there savings that the student or family has that they can use for that gap? Is the student going to get a part-time job over the summer to save money to work towards that gap? Because you want to understand how much you'll owe, not just from student loans, but as the semester is set to begin, what is the gap between the financial aid that is being offered and the total cost of attendance? I run into this situation fairly often with students who are commuting to and from George Mason. I'm reminded of a student in particular who their financial aid covered tuition and fees and books and supplies. But they weren't going to get enough financial aid either through grants, scholarships, work study, or loans to cover their transportation, meals, living expenses. So what her parents offered to her were that as long as she was making satisfactory progress academically on a semester by semester basis, student could still live at home, and they would cover gas and insurance for the car for the student to get to and from campus. But that's only because the student had a conversation with their parents and said, hey, this is what Mason's offering me. This is the gap that I have. I don't want to necessarily borrow money and get into a lot of debt. And her parents were willing to let her, still live at home and cover those expenses. For any students who are here, don't assume that your parents are going to do this. You need to have a conversation with them to make sure that they make sense for their budget. Maybe they were planning to turn your room in to a man cave or gaming room or knock down the wall and make their master bedroom bigger. Have a conversation with your parents about what they're able to do, if anything, to help you pay for your education. Because students, this is your education. So you need to take ownership over how the bill is going to be met in this process. Even in a situation where your parents have very generously said they're going to take care of the expense for you, as long as you're making progress, you need to step in and take ownership over this, because the bills are coming to you. They're going to be in your name. And outside of a Parent Plus loan, you'll be the one getting direct correspondence about what is owed, and outside of installment plans that parents sign up for. Because if you have a set target in mind about the maximum amount of money that you're comfortable borrowing, you need to know that now before you make a decision as you're reviewing your financial aid award letters, so that you can keep yourself on track and not borrow more than you intend to pay for your undergraduate degree, especially if you're thinking about going to graduate school and you want to become a doctor, a lawyer, a veterinarian. If you want to go pursue your MBA, typically those graduate experiences come with a lot of student loan debt. So you want to be aware of what you're borrowing now, even before you get to those next steps. And as you're understanding more about what the process is asking you to borrow to pay for school, or what you may have to borrow over the course of your entire undergraduate career, look at your school's graduation and loan default rates. Are students enrolling and graduating in 4 years? Are they graduating in 5 years or 6 years? What are the reasons for those delays? Oftentimes, they can be related directly to financial aid that is either received or not received by the student. For their graduates, are they working in positions and with salaries that enable them to pay their student loans back once they go into repayment? I know that can be, especially for students, that can be hard thinking about, what does this look like for me 10 or 15 years from now? But for parents, this is an area that you can really help your students. Because whether it's a car note, a mortgage, paying other revolving debt like credit cards, you've got experience with this as parents in some capacity. So you can help your student understand what these long-term efforts and planning and paying back things look like, and help them make a well-informed decision about what comes next in this process, and if they can afford the education in this major at the school that they want to attend. Because what happens when the financial aid award letter comes in? You should see things that are the same across the board. So what I would hope you would see in your financial aid award letter are these two things: both cost of attendance outline for the upcoming academic year, and then what the financial aid package looks like. Sometimes they'll have a financial aid offer, and then instead of splitting it out in two different tables, they'll have one table with the cost of attendance right beside the financial aid that's going to cover it. Those are the best financial aid award letters in my experience, because they show students exactly where the money's coming from to pay for every single item on this list. And most financial aid award letters now delineate between gift aid, so money that you don't have to pay back, and loans or self-help through work study, part-time job, on-campus employment. So make sure you're paying attention to those categories. Again, grants, scholarships, or dollars that you do not have to pay back in this process, as long as you meet those requirements of making typically satisfactory academic progress or maintaining XYZ GPA as you move throughout your undergraduate career. But as we can see through the total cost of attendance, $60,000. The net cost is $24,500 in this scenario. So again, if a student is here, what is the plan to pay for post-secondary education at this point? In this scenario, maybe the student is close enough so they can live at home, so parents will house and feed them. That eliminates this $14,000, and they'll take care of gas and insurance for the car in terms of transportation. That's $15,000. There's still a gap, $9,500 gap. How is the student going to cover that? Is that through additional borrowing, so through additional student loans? Are there $10,000 in scholarships that the student can apply for and receive between now and the fall semester? Are those dollars that parents or the student themselves can sign up for an installment plan to pay for over the course of the semester? these are all conversations that to have as you receive these financial aid award letters. And again, you're paying attention to that total cost of attendance and what the net cost is after financial aid is factored out. In this process, you can make decisions about, again, the type of meal plan, or making sure you're buying books through third-party vendors or through students who have had the course the previous semester to save money there. Maybe you don't need to spend $2,000 on personal expenses. Maybe 1,000 can cover it for the year. But the harder part is sometimes a financial reality that, especially for students who are worried about borrowing a lot of money to pay for school, sometimes this is where schools are eliminated as an option. And that can be a hard conversation to have, but I want students and parents to have this conversation. And parents to help your student understand that if institution is asking for, so in this scenario, we got down to 9,500, but the student would be looking at borrowing roughly 16,000 with the decisions that we made each year. That's $64,000 over the course of 4 years. Some of that's subsidized, so interest doesn't start accruing from the time that a student is borrowing those funds. Some of it's not, though. So interest starts accruing from the day that those funds are borrowed. Some of it's through the Department of Education, so through federal sources. Some of it's through private institutional or non-institutional sources for loans. So, is $64,000 a no for a student or a family? For some students, it's a manageable amount of money that they can borrow because they know that they'll graduate on time. Typically, maybe their school has a 85% four-year graduation rate. And they know that for students in their major going into their career field, that their expected salary at graduation, starting their new job, is $70,000 a year. So they know that borrowing $64,000 is less than their annual salary at graduation once they start working, and over the course of 5 to 10 years, they're comfortable saying, I can pay that back and still have money for other things. But if you're in a situation like me, as an example, when I was in your shoes for students, I could not imagine borrowing more than $40,000 a year. And now this was a while ago. This was about 20 years ago when I was reviewing this decision and making this decision with my family and others. And but for me, that's what my mom and stepdad earned on a yearly basis. And so I could not go to college and borrow more than what they made, and feel comfortable with myself and feel comfortable with the decision that I had made. So for me, that was my limit. For other students, it might be a $60,000 limit. For other students, it might be only $20,000. So students, know yourself. Parents, have a conversation with your kid about the amount of money they'll be borrowing to pay for their education. Is it worth the investment in terms of the money they're setting aside? Because there are other things that they might not even be thinking about. What about that first-time home purchase? What about a family? Is there a marriage down the road? Do they want to take vacations once they're working? Are there things that the family might need help out with down the road? Are parents nearing retirement? Are there going to be things that they're going to rely on the student to help them with 10 years down the road when they may be still repaying student loans? Have those conversations now, and let them be regular, ongoing conversations each year that the student is receiving the financial aid award letter, to make sure that both they're on track in terms of what they want to borrow or getting less than that. But if they're having to change decisions about what they're borrowing, are they comfortable with that, with the long-term implications of what that means for them in terms of their ability to have a comfortable life? So again, have this conversation as a family. What does it look like to pay on a semester by semester basis? Because that's how the bills and financial aid are breaking down and dispersed. Keep in mind that loans must be repaid. Sometimes between what the student is able to balance out with their family, because the family, maybe mom and dad can help out with $5,000 as an installment plan over the course of the semester. But the student is going to work over the course of the academic year in summer to save that $5,000. So next year, mom and dad don't have to do the installment plan. Or maybe parents are okay with the student still living at home and commuting, So they'll take care of those expenses as a part of the budget so then the student doesn't have to borrow those funds. So have those conversations and make sure they're an ongoing conversations that everybody stays on the same page. Save where you can within your budget, but within reason. Again, the student needs to eat. They need their books and supplies to do well academically, and they need courses that fit their major and their degree track for on-time graduation. Cut expenses where you can. Students, you may need to pick up a part-time job or two to help your parents out because this is your education. And no matter what your parents are saying, you're the one that's responsible for figuring out how to pay for it. Even if your parents are very generously able and willing to help you pay for it, it's your responsibility as a student because, again, the bills are in your name. Everything's being sent your way in terms of financial aid, and you'll be making decisions about how you're going to pay for all those expenses along the way. Don't count on scholarships that you applied for before you win them. Be very careful with this. I've worked on scholarship review committees at the local, state, regional, national level. So 4 different levels of scholarship programs. And I have seen some students count on awards that they thought they were a shoo-in for, and based on previous years, they may have been. But every scholarship review is unique in and of itself. Even if somebody has given you a hint or a nudge that you're a great fit for a scholarship, that doesn't mean you're going to receive it. So until you get the scholarship award in hand or through your email, mail notification, whatever that is that the organization is giving you, don't count on it until you receive that. Once you receive those scholarship offers, make sure you understand what they're for. Are they one-time awards? Are they renewed based upon meeting X, Y, and Z requirements over the course of the next year? Are they renewed automatically as long as you're choosing to stay enrolled? But do you have to pursue a certain major? Do you have to enroll in a certain type of institution to receive that award? Make sure you understand those requirements before making your decision as well. Consider appealing your offer, but before you appeal, have good reason for it. The financial aid award letter, the financial aid not meeting your cost of attendance in and of itself, typically for most institutions, is not a good enough reason to appeal. Has the household income changed drastically in the last 2 years between the 2022 tax year and today, 2024? Did a parent have or another sibling have an unexpected illness that resulted in a lot of medical bills that the family was not planning for and has changed the budget? Has a grandparent or another relative moved in because times are tough financially and family's family and the house is open? That changes the budget for the household. So when things like that happen, there are formal appeals that you can file with your institution. Make sure you read what they're asking for and send them the information by their deadlines, because sometimes an appeal will be rejected simply because the student did not meet the deadline that the school asked for. So keep track of that as you go along. Once you have a couple of financial aid award letters, you can then do an across-the-board comparison from institution to institution to see what your net cost is. This is a scenario where the state institution, even though the direct cost, the tuition and fees are lower than the private school, is going to cost the student more because the private university gave more in grants and scholarships. The student is having to borrow the same amount from 5,500 across the board in terms of federal student loans, but they're having to cover a little bit more in terms of the net cost. So make sure you're not just understanding your cost of attendance and what your financial aid award looks like from institution to institution, but comparing one institution to another, make sure you're understanding your net cost across the board. Things should be the same in terms of federal grants that you've received, but one second. But if you have questions, one, ask. Financial aid offices are here for that reason. If you're confused about any item that is listed in your financial aid award letter, make sure you're asking for more information so that you understand. But do that cross comparison from one institution to another. Make sure you're paying attention to the deposit deadline. Typically, they're due by May 1st. This year, especially with all the delays from federal student aid, FAFSA, and processing, institutions have pushed out their deadlines, but not all have. So as you're waiting on your financial aid award letters, make sure you're paying attention to these deadlines. A lot of the public schools in Virginia have moved out to May 15th or June 1st, depending on the institution. But have a plan for how you're going to pay for things once your bill comes due in August before you make your decision about where you're going to enroll. Because your fall bill is due before classes begin. And if you're working over the course of 3 months to figure out how you're going to pay for your cost of attendance, that's a lot better than scrambling in 2 weeks or as classes begin, figuring out how you're going to make all this work. Because at the end of the day, students, you have to choose the college that is the right fit for you, not only academically, not only from a place where you get a sense that you belong on that campus and it's a good fit for you in terms of the environment, but do the cost make sense? And this is where you will need to have conversations with your parents and your family, because it's a family decision about where the student goes to school, even though the student is the one pursuing the education. So just make sure you're asking questions along the way. And that is the end of my presentation. I just wanted to see real quick if anybody had any questions. If not, I'll go to my contact page. So if you have any questions, I'll just scan the QR code, sign up for more information, or send me an email, give me a call, send me a text if you don't have any questions this evening. And that's all I got, Alyssa.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jason, and families and students. We hope this was really valuable. And even if you're waiting on your award letters, referring back to this, it was recorded. So you can always refer back to this, and please feel free to reach out to Jason. I'm also going to put in the chat just a reminder that every high school has a college and career counselor. So you as a student or you as a family, your child has a college and career counselor. And so the contact list for that is in the chat. So we are meeting with actually all of our seniors right now. We are completing our senior survey and asking students to indicate what is their plan for after high school. And we're asking them to decide on a college, and we know that those decisions can change. And so just to change those colleges, just so we can send the final transcripts, would just be reaching out to your college and career counselor. And we know that these decisions will be in flux over the next month. So again, that contact list is in the chat. And I know we do want to offer you a survey to share your experience with us today. So Ms. Huff just put that in the chat as well. Please do the survey, share your experience with us. And if there's anything that we can do in the future, just as a reminder, all these family engagement sessions do offer translation. So if your family does like information translated during these sessions, those requests are done online on the family engagement website, and we just ask that you do that in advance so that we can acquire translators and interpreters. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And reaching out with Jason is free. The ECMC College Place works in in partnership with our public schools, and we are so lucky to have Jason as our contact. He works alongside a lot of our college and career counselors as well. You might have heard him at several of our other family engagement sessions. So it is absolutely free to consult with him. He is not a financial planner, right? So I know Jason always has that caveat, but that collaboration is really valuable, and we do that often as school counselors and college and career counselors as well. Thank you all so much for joining us today, and we wish you a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.